love when an author can surprise me like this. I didn't love this book. Hey, how's it going? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Gabby, and today we're going to be starting on a thriller and romance reading vlog. I've actually already finished filming this reading vlog, but then I realized I never filmed an intro. And at the start of this reading vlog, I was actually working on the fantasy reading vlog that I did earlier, which I will have linked down below, by the way, if you missed it. But during that vlog, I was kind of starting to go through a pretty rough week. And then I was like, man, I really want to read something that's like more in my comfort zone right now. So I started reading some thriller and romance books that I've been highly anticipating. And I kind of just allowed myself to mood read some of the thrillers and the romance books that are on my TBR this week. And some of the books that I got around to reading this week include Count My Lies. This one is a new release thriller that I've been hearing some great things about from some of my friends, so I decided to give it a go in this vlog. I also ended up reading Someone Knows by Vi Keeland, and this one is an ARC copy that I have. This one goes on sale in June. And this is a new release thriller book from an author that I have enjoyed in the past. Vi Keeland actually had a thriller that came out last year that was called The Unraveling, and it was one that I gave 4 stars. I really enjoyed it, and I also have read a lot of romance books from this author in the past, and I love when an author writes both like thriller and romance books. I think that's very fun. I also ended up reading my BookTube book club pick, which is Tell Me What You Did by Carter Wilson. This one is a new release thriller that just came out in the month of January, and I will be having a live show for this book coming up very soon, so the live show link will be linked down below if you want to save the link. And then I also read some of my most anticipated romance books of the year, because we have the new Abby Jimenez, Say You'll Remember Me. If you recall, last year I read Just for the Summer, and that was like probably my #1 favorite romance book that I read last year. And so I've been highly anticipating this new Abby Jimenez. And then I also ended up reading Promise Me Sunshine just recently, earlier this year. I read the book Ready or Not by this author, and that book was like an instant 5-star, one of my new all-time favorite romances ever. And so because of that, I've been highly anticipating this new release from this author. So yeah, I'm so glad that I finally got to knock some of these romance and thrillers off of my TBR in this video. So let me send you back about a week ago to when I started. Hello, hi, I wanted to update you because I have started reading Count My Lies, and in fact, I'm now 45% of the way through the book. I just hit page 145. I was able to check out this book from my library on my Kindle, so I've been reading it as an ebook. And so far, this book has been reading super quick, which is great, you know, because it's exactly why I wanted to pick up this book, because I've just been having a really hard week, and like my attention span is completely shot right now, so I just need something that's like easy to get into, and this book has been exactly that so far. I'm not gonna lie though, this book is kind of reading like a lot of thrillers that I've read in the past, because in this story we're following this protagonist named Sloane, and she is just like a compulsive liar. Like everything that comes out of her mouth is a lie, and she actually really enjoys lying. We get flashbacks of this character's childhood where like she was telling all these lies as a kid, and when she'd get punished, you know, for these lies, she just says things like, well, it didn't make me want to stop lying, it just made me want to get better at it. And like, you know, she's a typical kind of, you know, thriller protagonist where like she just lies about everything. At the start of this book, she meets this guy in the park who's there with his daughter, and she tells him that her name is Kate and that she's a nurse, and she's able to like help the daughter with like a bee sting situation or something like that. And so he's like, oh my god, thank you, that's so kind. And she like immediately takes a liking to this guy. Following that, she meets the guy's wife, this woman named Violet, and Violet is like, oh yeah, you were the one in the park. And so Violet ends up inviting her to their house for dinner, and it's kind of like one of those typical thriller setups where it's like a woman that's getting obsessed with a couple and like trying to like integrate herself into their lives, which is a trope that I do have fun with. You know, it reminds me of a lot of thrillers that I've read before. It kind of reminds me of like Behind Her Eyes, just in the way of the setup of it, where like a woman's getting obsessed with a married couple. It kind of reminds me of Bad Mommy in that way, but it's really interesting because she just keeps on piling the lies to these people, because obviously they think that she's a nurse, and she's not a nurse. She's actually just a nail technician. Like, she doesn't even work in the medical field. And so far this book has been pretty entertaining because I'm liking seeing like what she comes up with on the spot, and like there's been moments where she's like almost been caught in her lies already. So I do think there's like some entertainment value with that. I also think it's so funny how often this main character has mentioned Taylor Swift. Like, oh my god, this author's clearly trying to appeal to the Swifties. Like, she's already talked about Anti-Hero, Midnights, she's talked about Welcome to New York, she mentioned Shake It Off, she talks about the Eras tour like with the little girl and how they make friendship bracelets. Like, there's a lot of Taylor Swift references in this book, which I am having fun with, you know, as a Swiftie. I was just starting to look at the next chapter and I can see Taylor Swift's name on this next page of chapter 16 when it says Taylor Swift's lyrics pop into my head, and she's talking about the song Karma. So like there is a lot of Taylor Swift references in this. I feel like at this point I would be surprised if I ended up giving this book more than like 3 stars, because as enjoyable as it is, it's kind of of reading like the typical kind of like popcorn thriller to me. I mean, it's the perfect distraction for me right now, but I'm also sitting here like, is this book gonna really surprise me? Like, I don't know, that is to be determined. But I have faith, you know, like I just get a little bit nervous with these thrillers where it's like most of the thrilling aspects is like, oh my god, I just lie all of the time, because then I'm like, okay, are you lying to me as the reader as well? Like, can I trust you? Like, I don't know who to trust. I also think it's interesting because there's a little bit of a backstory going on where there's this woman who like has a restraining order against her, and it seems like there's some history with this woman that we don't yet know all of the details about yet. And so like I am very curious about that situation and how that's gonna unravel, and I'm assuming that's probably gonna end up biting her in the ass with these new people. So like it's entertaining, it's good, I'm having a fun time. Is it gonna be more than 3 stars at this point? I don't know, but it's exactly the distraction that I need from my life right now. So we're just rolling with it. It's about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm gonna try to finish reading this thriller today, and later tonight in about 2-ish hours I'm gonna be going and getting dinner with my parents. We love to go to this Mexican restaurant. My parents really love going out to dinner super early too because they like to get the happy hour. So like we'll see if I can finish this book before we go out to dinner. It is much later in the night. It is after 10 p.m. But I wanted to update you because I ended up having a really great night. I went out to dinner with my parents. We had some really good Mexican food, and then after we came home, I ended up watching 5 more episodes of The Vampire Diaries with my mom. I finished reading Count My Lies, and I was able to finish this right before I went out to dinner with my parents, which was perfect. And this book, oh my gosh, I'm actually really surprised. I think I want to give this 4 stars. Like, I actually really liked this a lot more than I thought I would. You know, I feel sometimes with thrillers, it can really feel like I've seen it all, and I feel like that's why I tend to get so burnt out on thrillers, because they start to feel all the same to me. But I feel like while the setup of this book kind of felt really similar to a lot of thrillers that I've read before, this one actually did go in a direction that I didn't expect, and I had a lot of fun with the different twists in this book. And I don't want to reveal anything or say too much because I do think this is one of those books that's better if you just jump into it knowing as little as possible. But I feel like this author actually did a really good job at like misdirecting me, making me think that I knew what was going on when I actually had no idea. I also do love this kind of, you know, writing style where like, because the main character lies a lot, you just don't really know if you can trust her perspective. I think that that's like a really fun thing, and I thought that her lies were like very interesting, and I couldn't wait to see the lies catch up with her. But I feel like this author was like one step ahead of me this whole book, because I feel like I probably could have predicted this if I really thought about it and tried to, but I read this all in one sitting, so it was like very easy to just get lost in the story. And I do think that this is a thriller that I could recommend to people who do read a lot of thrillers, because it's just one of those thrillers that is like very entertaining, you know, like very easy to get into, but it does have a few surprises. It's not often anymore these days that I read a thriller in one sitting like this. Like, I did find this book hard to put down, and I think that that's a good thing. And so I'm really impressed with this one, and I get the hype, and I'm like so shocked because I know earlier today I was just saying like, oh, I'd be surprised if I gave this more than 3 stars. But I love when an author can surprise me like this, you know, and like this is why I continue to pick up thrillers, because they are just so much fun. I just love that feeling of being surprised by a thriller and being surprised at what's happening in the plot. It is just very entertaining. So this one was a win. And you know what's crazy is I do think that this book was actually a book of the month selection, not this month, but I think it was from last month or the month before. And now I'm bummed that I skipped on it because I should have picked this up from book of the month. So we're kicking off this vlog very strong with the 4-star thriller, and I'm stoked about this because I feel like I've become so much more critical of thrillers in these last few years. So for me to give a 4-star now, I feel like that's pretty high praise coming from me. earlier today, I was doing some reading sprints on Patreon and I got the chance to start Someone Knows by Vi Keeland. I already got 94 pages in, and this is definitely a thriller that is reading so quick. Something that I'm really liking about this story is that we're following a protagonist who she works as a professor and she teaches a creative writing class. And so her job is that she's kind of like reading all of the first chapters that her students are submitting. And right at the start of this book, she's talking about how like, oh, it's finally May 20th and that it's the 20-year anniversary of when she had to do something. And you're kind of like trying to figure out like, what is she talking about? Like the 20th anniversary of what? And then by the end of the first chapter of this book, she's reading a chapter that one of her students have submitted, and she starts to realize that this student submitted a story that is what happened to her 20 years ago. And then she's like, oh my god, like somebody knows. And so then it kind of like kicks off the mystery right away of like trying to figure out like who knows about her past. And so far it really has been gripping me. Like I love when a book can really hook me from the very first chapter, because I feel like that's been harder and harder to do lately with thrillers. And so I really liked the way that this book kicked off. Something that's kind of fun about this book, but also like equally annoying at the same time, is that this character is currently living in New York City, but she's from Louisiana originally. And so there's already been a lot of scenes of her, you know, like she's going back home to Louisiana to try and like get to the bottom of like, who could this person be that knows so much about her past? And like the most annoying thing is that all of the locals, like all of the people that she'll talk to in Louisiana will be like, oh, you're like just a New York girl now. Or like some of the guys that she's like hooking up with in Louisiana, they'll be like, oh my god, like New York City girls are just different. And they all keep having this like attitude of like, oh my god, she's just so much better than the other girls, because like New York City girls are just so much hotter than like the Louisiana girls. And like that's just been repeated over and over and over again. And I'm like, oh my god, we get it. Like you think you're so much better than everyone because you're from New York. It's like, I don't even know if it's this character necessarily having that mindset, but it's like everyone in the town that she's talking to is having that mindset. So she's almost giving like not like the other girls in a way that's just a little bit annoying, like a tad annoying. I am liking, you know, the setup of the story so far, even though it does kind of feel similar to a lot of thrillers that I've read in the past. And you know, of course, our protagonist is kind of like romantically involved with this guy who's a detective, like right at the start of this book, because of course she is, right? So that's another kind of thriller trope that I just find to be like a little bit annoying, because I'm like, if you have this dark, mysterious past that you don't want anyone to figure out, you know, then why are you dating a detective? Like that's literally his job, is to like figure shit out, you know? I know it sounds like I'm complaining a lot, but I swear that I'm really liking it so far, actually. Like I'm having fun with it. This is exactly the kind of thriller that I just needed right now. And this one isn't too long either. It's only about 270 pages. So I think there's a good chance that I could try to finish this one up tomorrow.
You're looking for someone I can't find it. Maybe we're meant to be a lost cause, but I can see a future that's brighter.
Hey, hello. It is the next afternoon. It's about 3:30, and I wanted to update you because I have just finished reading Someone Knows. Earlier today, I decided to go down to Bellingham because I wanted to get an acai bowl for breakfast, and then I just had to do a few things while I was down there. I picked up some groceries, ran a few errands. I also went to the library because I've been reading the book The Honeys, which this one is like a young adult horror book. I've actually been listening to this one on audio for like a few weeks now. I started it during Screaming Color actually at the end of March, and today I was able to get like 80% of the way through it. I only have a tiny bit of this left, so there's a good chance that I'm probably gonna finish this one up later tonight. But this one is a young adult horror book that I'm actually really enjoying. I'm having a lot of fun with it. This one has really good like creepy camp summer vibes. I only have a little bit of this book left, but it's feeling like it could be a 4-star book, which is exciting because I don't always love young adult horror, but this one has been recommended to me so much throughout the years, so I'm glad that I'm finally reading this one. I'm so bummed that I didn't end up liking this one very much. I'm probably gonna end up giving this 2 stars. I mean, I still do stand by the fact that this book is one of those thrillers that is very easy to read, very easy to get into, and I think you could fly through this book in like 1 or 2 sittings, you know, like it's just that kind of thriller. It definitely reminded me a bit of like Frida McFadden in terms of like writing style and like how easy it is to get through. But for me, this was just a little bit underwhelming and unsatisfying. I mean, there was a particular twist in the book that I personally don't like. Like, I don't really love reading about that kind of twist in my thrillers. I just feel like it's a little bit bit like, I don't know, convenient and a little bit frustrating. And then in the second half of this book, there were a few different reveals. Some of them I did not see coming and I was like, oh, like shit, that's kind of interesting. But then most of them I did see coming, and especially like the epilogue or like the final chapter, I was like, really, bro? That was so obvious. Like, what the fuck? Like, that's the twist. And this book was a little bit frustrating towards the end because I feel like that epilogue, it was trying to end on like this massive like plot twist. And I was just like, that doesn't feel like a plot twist to me. Like, that felt so obvious. So I feel like it's even more frustrating to read a final chapter when you know exactly what's coming. I mean, something good that I can say about this one is that I did like the kind of like small town vibes of this book, because most of this book takes place in Louisiana, you know, where this main character is going back to the town where she grew up. And so the majority of the story is taking place in Louisiana. And so it definitely has those like small town kind of vibes. And then I don't necessarily think that this is a good thing, but this book does have quite a bit of romance in it as well. Or not even like romance, just a lot of scenes of like this character having sex with like multiple different guys. I don't necessarily mind when thriller books have romance scenes, and in fact, like, I love a good romance in any book, but like the romance in this book was also just like a little bit of a letdown. It was a little bit underwhelming. I thought that our main character was a little bit too trusting of like every single guy, and I think that's why it probably reminded me a lot of Frida McFadden, because I always have the same complaints about her protagonist, is that she's always just sleeping with the guys that I'm like, whoa, what? Like, red flag alert. So like, it just bothers me a little bit personally when characters make stupid decisions like that. But you know, this was a perfectly fine thriller. I don't know, it seems to be getting very good reviews on Goodreads so far. This one's coming out in June. I think I have to give this 2 stars though, because this is definitely like the kind of thriller that I'm probably gonna forget most of this plot in like 2 weeks. You know, like, it's very forgettable for me. I wanted to update you because I have started reading Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jimenez. I just hit chapter 18 and I'm 142 pages in. So far, this book has been going pretty well. You know, like, this is definitely one of my most anticipated romances of the entire year because I am a big fan of Abby Jimenez. I mean, just for the summer that I read last year was like one of my favorite romance books that I've ever read, and it's probably my favorite book still from this author. And in this story, we're following these 2 characters named Xavier and Samantha. And Xavier, he works as a vet. The first scene we get introduced to this man is a really great moment for him because he's like saving this dog. This freaking lady comes into the vet and she's like, I don't want this dog anymore. Like, you're gonna have to put him down. And he's only 4 years old. Like, who would do such a thing? Like, that is so awful and so cruel. And so this man Xavier is like, yeah, you know what? Like, you can pay for the euthanization, but then he like secretly takes the dog because he's like, how dare you? Like, this dog is only 4 years old. So I was like, okay, we're off to a great start with this man Xavier. Like, I love how he protected the dog in that moment. And then we're following this character named Samantha, and how these 2 meet is that she ends up coming into his office, in the vet office, and her cat has this illness and like the cat isn't doing well, and he tells her that, you know, the cat is gonna need this surgery that's gonna cost anywhere between like $5,000 to $10,000, and he said he recommends just putting the cat down. And then she's like, no, how dare you? And so she makes like a GoFundMe for her cat and starts like raising money, and then he ends up donating money to her GoFundMe, and he's like, I'm sorry, like, maybe I shouldn't have said that, kind of thing. And so then he ends up asking her out on a date, and the story just kind of kicks off with like these 2 going on a date, and it's like so beautiful and magical, and they have so much chemistry. And then immediately after their incredible date, she ends up telling him that she's going to be moving to California soon because she has to take care of her sick mother. And so even though they had like the most perfect date of all time and they had all of this chemistry, they never really got the chance to, you know, like, explore their relationship because she's gonna be going away. And so she tells him as she's leaving, she's like, you should just forget me. And so of course the book's called Say You'll Remember Me because I have a feeling he's not gonna forget her. And this book is going well so far. I do think it's reading like the typical kind of like Abby Jimenez story where like these characters do feel very real to me, and I think it's because a lot of, you know, real world issues are being explored in this book. I mean, because our character, you know, Samantha, her mom is dealing with dementia and her mom is only 54 years old, so she's really young to be dealing with something like dementia, and the dementia is just progressing so much, and that's actually just like so heavy at times and like so sad to read about. And then also as you start to learn about Xavier and like his history with his family, there are a lot of heavy topics, you know, being explored in this book. There is a content warning at the very start of this, by the way, so you know at the very beginning like what the different content warnings are going to be in this book. Damn, I was not expecting this book to be as heavy personally. Like maybe I should have expected it, because I do think in a lot of ways like Just for the Summer is also a book that was unexpectedly, you know, like emotional and like sad, and kind of similar to Just for the Summer. You know, we have these two characters who have been through a lot of really hard things and are currently dealing with some really difficult things with their families. And I don't know why reading about dementia specifically is such a difficult thing for me. Like I think it's like the scariest thing in the world. Like that's actually like my worst fear, of either it happening to me or watching somebody that I love just like slowly starting to lose all of their memories. Like that is just a horror story to me. Like I don't, like there's something about it that really triggers me while I read it. So it's been a little bit tough for me to read those scenes, but I really do like the chemistry between these two, and I like that some of this story is actually taking place in California. You know, I was wondering on this cover, I was like, is that not like the Santa Monica Pier? And it is the Santa Monica Pier. So like that's very cool, because you know, I'm originally from California. That's where I was born and raised, and so I grew up, you know, around the Santa Monica Pier, and so I'm very familiar with the area. So I do love the scenes that are taking place around that area. I find it very fun. But this book is going well so far. I will say it doesn't feel like it's gonna be like a 5-star new favorite from me at this point, because by the time I was this deep into Just for the Summer, I was like absolutely obsessed, and I'm not really feeling that right now. But I'm not getting those same feelings of like I'm obsessed with them, I'm like kicking my feet and shit. Like I'm not really getting that yet. So I'm gonna continue reading this one this afternoon. It's also so nice, by the way, because the audiobook for this one, which I'm currently listening to on Libro as well, the audiobook is so good because it has that like duet style of narration. I didn't even know what that means, but it basically means that we get both of the characters' perspectives, but then anytime that she talks on his chapters, it's actually the woman narrator's voice. It's amazing. It really makes for a great listening experience, and I definitely appreciate it. So the audiobook has been great. So I'm going to continue reading more of this one tonight. I'm really excited for tonight because my sister is going to be coming over soon, and we're going to be making like a homemade carbonara, which we've never actually attempted to do like a real carbonara before, with, you know, like the fresh egg and the pancetta. So like hopefully it turns out good. My girl, big girl. This playlist is trying to come for my throat. Hello, good morning. It has been a couple of days since I last updated this vlog, because the last clips that you saw, I was like making the carbonara with my sister, which turned out so good, by the way. It was absolutely delicious. I can't wait to make it like that again in the future. I can have the recipe linked down below that we used, by the way, but the recipe says to use bacon, and we used actual pancetta, and it turned out amazing. And then yesterday, I ended up going over to Mochi Nut with my sister and getting some donuts, and we binge watched most of the new season of Black Mirror together. We watched 5 episodes, and then we're gonna watch the last one together tonight. But anyway, it's about time that I updated you, because late last night I was able to finish reading Say You'll Remember Me, and I am so sad to come on here with this update and let you know that I didn't love this book. And I'm so shocked about this. I mean, I do still think that I'm probably gonna give this book around 3 stars. Like, I think this book was good. It was well written. I just did not feel nearly as connected to these characters as I thought I would. I also think just the writing in general in this book, why did it feel so much more like literary fiction and instead of like romance, because this book is just so endlessly sad. I mean, obviously it's like sad to read about this main character and like her mom has dementia that is just getting way, way, way worse as you continue reading the book. But then it's also like there's so many sad things happening with his family, and then there's so many sad things that happen to them. I don't like to use the phrase trauma porn, but like at times it really did read like trauma porn. I was like, oh my god, like how many more bad things are gonna happen to them? And it was really sad and just kind of depressing to read, and not really the vibe that I was expecting with this. I mean, I know that some people might say the same thing about Just for the Summer, because that book is actually pretty sad as well, but maybe I didn't mind it as much because I felt very connected to their characters and the situations felt very real to me. Whereas like sometimes in this book, I was just like, oh my god, come on, like are you serious? Like this is so upsetting. I mean, I did like their connection and like the way they met at the beginning, but I can totally see why people are saying this one feels very insta-love, just because I think they go from being like, I'm attracted to you, to like, I'm gonna give up my whole life for this person very quickly. But then also, I don't know, like the middle section of this book just really started to feel very slow paced for me and very repetitive with like what was happening, just because it felt like they were having the same conversations and like the same kind of dilemma like over and over and over and over again. There's this one quote though that I just absolutely loved, and there would be moments like this in the writing where the quotes would just surprise me and be so beautiful, and I would just love it so much. I love when they said, you think it's the big memories you should be chasing, and it is in a way, birthdays and vacations and special occasions, but the small memories are the fabric of your life, the ones so inconsequential that you don't even remember them. You just remember how you felt when you were making them. And I feel like that's kind of like the essence of the book, you know, like it's about the little moments, it's about the everyday moments, it's about like your hardest days when you don't think you can continue on anymore, and like he's the one person that gets you through those days. And I really do think that that's beautiful, and I can see how some people might find this book to be incredibly touching. I think that I really liked Xavier as a love interest, and I connected with him a little bit more than I connected with our main protagonist, Samantha. But also the writing of this book at times still felt a little bit like off to me or something, because at times they would have the most beautiful quotes like that, but then also like it felt like there was a lot of like modern kind of like TikTok lingo being used in this book that felt so cheesy to me, and it felt so cringy. Just as an example, it would use phrases like, oh, that was so mid, or like that gave me the ick, or she would say that was not on my bingo card for this year, or like something like that, or like she would compare this guy Xavier to like the main guy from Akatar or something. Like, I don't know, they were like, he looks like he just came out of a fantasy novel. It just felt like Abby Jimenez was like almost like trying too hard to like appeal to like the TikTokers or like, you know, the Gen Zs. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I just noticed a lot of that, and I was like, oh my gosh, like what's going on? I don't think that this is a bad book at all, and that's why I still want to give this 3 stars, because it is good. I liked the story. I just wish that I had liked the characters more, and I think maybe it's like when it comes to Abby Jimenez, because I've loved so many of her books, maybe I just have higher expectations now for her as an author, because like for me, I'm putting her up there now with like Emily Henry and like some of my top favorite romance authors. And so I think when I don't absolutely love their new books, it is pretty sad for me. Like I thought that this was going to be like an easy 5-star. So I am a little bit bummed that this book didn't go perfectly for me, but I'm still glad that I finally read it. Anyway, I just got out of the doctor's appointment. I just had to do like my annual wellness checkup. Everything's good. And yeah, now I'm going to head back to the house. I need to make breakfast because I'm so hungry. I'm probably going to make some coffee and then get started on the next read. Many hours later, it's almost 2 o'clock in the afternoon, but I wanted to update you because I started reading Promise Me Sunshine, and I am now at chapter 13. I'm about like 136 pages in. I just got back from taking a walk to the library because I had to pick up some library holds. I got my holds in on Strange Pictures and A Psalm for the Wild Built. These are 2 books that I'm hoping to read before the end of the month, and I didn't realize both of them are actually pretty much on the short side. This one is like a Japanese horror novel that I've been hearing such great things about, and there's like some art and like illustrations included on the inside, so how cool is that? And then this one is like a sci-fi novella that I've been hearing really great things about. A lot of people told me when I did my sci-fi vlog that they really think that I could like this one, so I wanted to pick it up from the library to give it a shot. And then also while I was there at the library library, there was like a book sale happening. And so I was like, oh, that's cool. It was unexpected. So I did some browsing and I didn't find anything at the book sale, but like, it's so cool that my library does these book sales pretty often. Anyway, I have started on this one, and I know you're probably thinking, you know, like I just said that the last romance book that I read was like very heavy, and this one does feel a little bit heavy so far as well. This is a book that I've been absolutely dying to read though, because I loved the book Ready or Not from this author. I actually just read it a few months ago and I loved it. It was a 5 stars. It's like one of my favorite romances that I've ever read now, so I've been highly anticipating this one. In this story, we're following this woman named Lenny, and she's currently going through a really hard time because her best friend has recently died of cancer. Hence, you know, why this one is a little bit heavy, as I said. So this book is talking a lot about, you know, like the grief that she's going through. This one also takes place in New York, which is very similar to the other book that I loved from this author. But in this book, she ends up getting this like temporary babysitting job for this young girl named Ainsley. She's like 7 years old, and her mother, Reese, hires her for a weekend. Like she's just gonna be taking care of this young girl for the weekend. And then she ends up meeting this guy, Miles, who is the uncle to this young girl, Ainsley. And he's kind of like, you know, judgy, kind of like right off the bat. Like he doesn't seem to like her. But as they start to get to know each other, she realizes that he's also dealt with a lot of grief in his life. We also do get, you know, some flashback type of chapters with her and her best friend. Those chapters are kind of like italicized and they're in between the chapters. And so we kind of get to see the relationship that she had with her best friend. And we kind of get to understand like why this was so hard for her. You know, she was also living with her best friend when she died. So this was like her person, you know? And it's really sweet because in those chapters that we get of her and her best friend before she died, we get to see how they came up with this list together called the List for Living Again. And it's like a whole list of things that she wants Lenny to do after she dies, you know, because like she knows that that was going to be like a really hard thing for her and that she might really struggle with her grief. And so she writes this list about all the things she wants her to do to like live her life again. And so the basic premise for this book is that this guy Miles, he wants Lenny's help with like getting closer to Ainsley, and he wants her to like teach him how to be better with children because, you know, Lenny is like really, really good with her, and so he wants her help, you know, trying to understand how he can get closer to them, because even though he's her uncle, you kind of find out that they have some history where like he's not that close with his family. And so in exchange for helping him, he says that he can help her by marking off things on her living again list, and so he's gonna help her do all of these things that her best friend always wanted her to do. And like the setup for this is really cute. It is really sweet. It was off to a little bit of a rough start just at the very beginning because I found her character to be a little bit annoying, because I don't know why she would do this thing where like it wasn't just with this guy Miles, but it was like any somewhat attractive guy she would come across, she would like immediately be like, that's my future husband, and like she'd be thinking, oh my god, we're gonna have twin daughters together and this is where we're gonna renew our vows, and like just imagining her entire future with this guy that she just like lays eyes on one time. And I was like, okay, this is starting to get a little bit annoying. Like I get it to an extent, but like I don't know, she was just kind of driving me a little bit nuts at the beginning. I don't know why part of me is thinking that it's reminding me of like Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover or something, but I think the only reason for that is because the guy, you know, the love interest, his name is Miles, and because he's like very sad because he's gone through a lot of grief recently, and so like that kind of feels like Ugly Love too. So I guess Miles, like the character, he kind of reminds me of the character from Ugly Love, but like obviously nothing else about this is similar to that book. Anyway, I'm going to lay on this couch and continue reading for the rest of the afternoon. My sister's gonna be coming over a little bit later tonight because we're gonna be making some HelloFresh burgers. I just got my HelloFresh delivery today, and it's enough for the whole family, so I'm gonna be making burgers for everyone tonight, and then we're probably gonna be watching the last episode of Black Mirror that we didn't get to watch last night, because the last episode of this season of Black Mirror is like really long. It's like an hour and a half, and it's also the sequel episode, I think, to like USS Callister, which was an episode in season 4, so we might actually rewatch that episode from season 4 because it's been a while and I'm a little bit fuzzy, so I want to rewatch that so it's like fresh in my head when we watch the new USS Callister episode, and I'm so excited.
Waking up in my bed, you're still stuck in my head. I'm not even hungover. I wanna call your phone, tell you what you did wrong.
Hello, it has been like maybe 3 days since the last time that I updated you, but I have finally finished reading Promise Me Sunshine. I've been reading this on and off for the last 3 days, and in fact, I read another book for a different video in between reading this one because I've been dreading this update because I didn't really love this book. I'm actually torn over how I want to rate this because I'm fully aware that this might just be a me thing. Like, there's nothing wrong with this book. You know, like, this book is beautiful and it's wholesome and it's sweet. And especially since this book deals with topics of grief, like, I do think that it's all handled very well and there's nothing wrong with the story. I just didn't really connect with this and I did not like this the way that I thought I would. I'm probably gonna end up giving this around 3 stars, even though for like my personal taste, it's probably closer to like a 2.5 stars if I'm being really honest. I just really struggled through this audiobook, and like every time I was about to pick up the audiobook to listen to it again, part of me was kind of dreading it because I just knew that I wasn't really enjoying the story. And I do think part of the reason why I didn't like this one as much is because of the audiobook. I have to be honest, the audiobook was not my favorite. I really did not like the way that this female narrator was narrating the character Lenny. I just found her to be so obnoxious at times. I will include a clip here of the actual audiobook so you can see what I mean.
You have a list of things that might need to happen before you think I'm ready to be with you? Do you have a Kiss Lenny list? He's squeezing his eyes shut. You said there were things that wouldn't count if you told me what they are. Things I have to do for myself. Cleaning the apartment or getting my stuff in order. One of those things? He sighs and turns to get his shoes on. I think you might be pathologically incapable of patience. I'm right! I crow.
Her voice was just very like chipper and like over the top and obnoxious, and like her behavior sometimes, especially in the second half of this book, sometimes she would come across as just being so like obnoxious and juvenile and like immature. Like one of the sex scenes when she's like literally laughing and she can't stop laughing at him. I don't know, it just felt so weird to me. Also, the way that the audiobook narrator would like narrate the voice of this 7-year-old girl, I also thought was very obnoxious, and I'll include a clip of that here.
Ainsley jolts up in Reese's lap and puts a hand on either shoulder. What is it? She asks too loudly, 3 inches from Reese's face. Harper invited us to her cabin for the weekend. Oh! And she's back. We're going right now. Should I go pack? You can eat the muffin in the car.
I know sometimes it's like difficult to like narrate the voice of a child in an audiobook, and it's almost like how can you even do it in a way that's not annoying, but I don't know why this felt like it was like grating on my ears. It was so obnoxious. So I guess maybe I would recommend, if you want to read this one, maybe just avoid the audiobook, because I do think the audiobook is part of the reason why I didn't like this one as much, and that's so terrible to say, but it's so true. Like, I just really did not like the narration on this audiobook. It was just incredibly annoying to listen to, and I think it made me so much more annoyed with Lenny's character than I would have been if I had read this physically. I mean, I don't know for sure. I just never really felt that connected to Lenny as a character, and then also to Miles as a character either. And I also think that Miles is such an underdeveloped character, at least in my opinion, because we never really get to know the full story about his grief. Like, I feel like so much of the story is focused on Lenny and like her grief with like losing her best friend and like her situation, but we don't ever really get a lot from Miles in terms of like his grief and like his ability to relate to her. I guess I just wanted so much more from his character and like learning more about his story. But then also even like Lenny's story with her best friend, I feel like some of the flashbacks, they just felt like so shallow or like surface level things. Like I never really felt like I got to understand their relationship, and like her best friend, like I feel like I never really knew her best friend, so I guess I just didn't connect to that aspect of the story either. I mean, I will admit that the ending of this book is absolutely beautiful, and like I can totally see how this book would make somebody emotional because it's definitely got one of those endings, you know, like it's meant to pull on your heartstrings. But I feel like such an asshole for not liking this book. There was one aspect of the book that I really liked when she was trying to get her friend to go with her to a K-pop concert. I thought that that was really fun, and like as a fan of K-pop, I like loved the representation of that in this. When the friend was like, I was just trying to Google their names and then I fell down the rabbit hole and now I know all their songs and stuff. Like that was so funny because I'm like, that is exactly how it feels to like get sucked into K-pop. I'm like, it always starts with just trying to Google how to say their names, and then you get sucked down the rabbit hole of a K-pop group immediately. And the way it was talking about the different fans like at their concert, I thought that that whole section was very entertaining and definitely one of the like highlights of this book for me. I loved the relationship that Lenny had with this little girl Ainsley and the way that Miles began to develop his relationship with her. I thought it was very sweet. And there was so much to love about this book. I mean, please take my review with a grain of salt because everybody and their mom seems to be like absolutely loving this. I've seen so many glowing reviews on Goodreads, and I was like browsing through some of the reviews that rated this book a little bit lower, and I did see a few of them mentioned that it was the audiobook narration that they just couldn't stand. So I'm definitely not alone in those feelings. So I'm very upset that these new romance releases are just not doing anything for me. I'm also scared because, you know, this month I'm gonna be reading the new Emily Henry for a Patreon exclusive vlog very soon. And I've already been hearing such mixed things about the new Emily Henry book, and I know a lot of my friends are really not liking that one either. And so I'm so terrified now because I'm like, what if I don't even like the new Emily Henry? And I feel like all hope is lost if I haven't been enjoying some of my most anticipated romances of the whole year. Like, what's going on? Anyway, I'm gonna stop bitching now. I'm gonna go make dinner. And then tomorrow I'm gonna start reading a thriller because clearly these romances are not delivering, and so I need to switch gears. Hello, it is the next morning and I wanted to update you because last night I started reading Tell Me What You Did and I got about 100-ish pages into this book. I just hit part 2 and so far I am really liking this story. I think the setup for this is very fun because we're following this woman named Poe who has this podcast and she lives in Vermont, and this podcast is very unique because basically she invites these people to come onto the podcast to confess their crimes, and like they can do this anonymously. So she tells them that only the audio of their interview is going to be used on the podcast and that the video will never be seen by anyone unless like the police, you know, request it from her. But she says she's going to destroy the video after like 6 months or something. And so she gets these people to come onto the podcast to anonymously confess their crimes, which in my opinion, I think that's such a fun concept for a podcast. Like I would definitely listen to something like this. Like I think it's so interesting. There's also a story going on between her and her producer, this guy named Kip. She ended up hiring him as her producer a few years ago and now they're dating. But what the plot of this book ends up being about is there's this guy named Ian who ends up coming onto her podcast and he's being like super weird and like super dodgy and kind of creepy, which is of course, you know, like pretty normal for what she's doing on her podcast. But she feels like something about this guy is off, but he also feels a little bit familiar to her for some reason. And then he ends the podcast by telling her that he killed her mother, and Poe starts freaking out because when we're reading from her perspective, she says not only does she know who killed her mother, but that she killed that man herself. And what I really like about this style of storytelling is that we're getting these like transcripts from this live stream episode in between the chapters where it says that they had a second follow-up live stream and he's asking her all of these questions about her past and he's trying to grill her because I guess he knows that she spent some time in New York and that she like killed the man that killed her mother. And so now she's starting to wonder like who actually is this man? Is any of this real? And like if it is real and this is the guy who killed her mother, then who did she kill back in New York? And so it's definitely setting up a lot of really fun mystery and I'm really liking the podcast elements of this. I think just in general her podcast is really interesting and really unique. I also last night I got to the first part in the book where there's a little QR code on the page and it was so cool because I actually scanned it with my phone and it's so cool. It takes you to this video of this woman who's like acting out the scene. I was like, that is so cool, so unique. I've never seen anything like that in a book before. And at the beginning of this book, they did say that there might be some, you know, QR codes throughout the book that you can scan and it'll like give you even more information about the story. So I think that's so cool. I love any like interactive things like that that books include. And so I'm very happy that this one's going well so far. It feels like I could rate this one pretty high. I guess it just depends on how the rest of this book goes. And I'm so excited because this one is my book troop, you know, book club pick for the month of April. So I'm glad that it's going well so far. I hope it continues to go well because, you know, this one's almost 400 pages. So like anything could happen. I don't know. But anyway, I just pulled up at the gym because I feel like I really needed the gym today because I ate fast food like so late last night before bed and I'm still feeling the weight of that this morning. Like my stomach feels so heavy and I just don't feel like myself. So I was like, you know what? I need to come to the gym. I need to walk it off. I'm going to continue listening to this one on audio today and hopefully I can finish listening to this on audio today. That's my goals. to check in for another update because I've still been reading Tell Me What You Did. I just hit chapter 79. I'm now 326 pages in. I only have this little section left, but I wanted to update because I'm having some mixed feelings about this. I mean, I do stand by everything that I said at the beginning, that like I love the idea of this podcast. I think it's so cool, it's so unique. But I guess what I'm struggling with is the fact that this book feels so long, and I feel like this middle section especially is starting to get so repetitive with the conversations that this character is having, because there's a lot of talk about this like live stream and if it's something that she wants to do or not. And at this point, I just feel like a lot of this is starting to feel very repetitive, and I'm like ready for the suspense of it all to like pick up, I guess. And I also do agree with some of the reviews that I was reading about this book where people were saying that Poe as a character, like sometimes she comes across in this way where she's just this like fragile little innocent, like can't even imagine harming a fly kind of character, but then at times she like all of a sudden will have these moments where she like tries to be a badass and she's like, yeah, like I could commit murder, like no doubt about that, and like she tries to act like she doesn't feel anything for like anyone. And it is so odd to me at times because I don't really feel like I have a good grasp of her character. Even over 300 pages in, I still don't really feel like I know her as a character. One part that I put a tab on that I was like, I freaking love that, is when she's talking about reading a book and she says, my mom would have called that a ripper. She said, a book so thrilling you're nearly ripping the pages off as you turn them. And I was like, I love that. Like I want to start calling like my favorite thrillers, like I'll be like, that one's a ripper. I've also seen a few more QR codes throughout the book as I'm reading it, and I am scanning them and like watching the videos as I'm reading, and I do think that the QR codes, they are pretty cool. Like I think it's really cool that a book publisher would go to such lengths to make the book such an immersive experience. Like I definitely think it's a cool thing to add to the book. But plot wise, oh my gosh, I'm hoping that this one can surprise me in this last little chunk because I don't know how I feel about it so far. It's just okay. I think I'm just waiting for things to pick up at this point because I was really invested in like the first 150 pages, and this last chunk has been very slow paced for me. I mean, it's weird to call a book like this slow paced because like there's so many chapters. Like I'm on chapter 79 and I think this book has like 100 chapters. So it's fast paced in the sense that, you know, the chapters are short, but it still feels like a slow burn just in terms of like the mystery that's actually happening, I guess. Okay, checking in again because I just finished reading Tell Me What You Did, and unfortunately I was not the biggest fan of the ending of this book, mostly because I had written out my predictions for like what I thought was going on, and I predicted the ending like plot twist of this book, and I actually thought that it was something that felt very obvious to me. So it's unfortunate that the ending of this book was not very surprising, or at least not in the ways that I wanted it to be. I really think if the ending had been more surprising, then maybe I would have rated this higher, but I think I'm probably gonna end up giving this one around 3 stars because it was good, it was fun, but I just wanted so much more from this, and I was especially hooked at the beginning. But I'm still so glad that I finally read this one, and I also love the fact, by the way, that the acknowledgements at the end of the book, there's a QR code and you can scan it, and then you can see the author, you know, actually talking about the book, and he talks about like who the book is dedicated to, and I thought that was such a nice touch and like a really cool thing. I love that the author decided to do that for the ending of this book. I actually think my favorite character in this entire book was Poe's dad. I don't know, I really liked the way that Poe's dad was written, and I found myself like rooting for him throughout the story. But anyway, wow, that is a wrap on this video. If you missed it, Tell Me What You Did is going to be my BookTube book club pick for this month, and I actually just announced recently that the live show is going to be happening on April 27th on a Sunday afternoon, so I will have the link for the live show down below if you want to save the link so you can come and join us to discuss this one. And I am really curious to see how my co-hosts end up feeling about this one. That is going to be a wrap on this video, so thank you so much for watching. I'm actually kind of shocked that the book Count My Lies ended up being my favorite thing that I read for this video. It sucks that I didn't find any new 5-star favorites with doing this video, but you know, I always have such a fun time reading thriller and romance books anyways. Thank you so much for watching. As always, if you've read any of these books in this video, please do let me know your thoughts down below, and I will see you very soon with another video. Bye!